2,000 years ago, beneath the streets of modern London, stood a city unlike any the island of Britannia had ever seen. A city of power, wealth, and relentless ambition. A city where cultures merged, where trade flourished, and where conflict brewed beneath the surface. This was Londinium, Rome's mighty outpost in the north, a testament to imperial dominance and strategic ingenuity. This is the story of Londinium, the Roman city that became the heart of Britain's empire. A place of ambition, struggle, and transformation, where Roman legions ruled and where resistance was never far away. Within months, the Roman legions crushed local resistance. Strategic roads are carved through dense forests, and a key outpost is established along the River Thames. It is here, at a crucial crossroads of commerce and military control, that Londinium is born. Rome did not just bring war, it brought civilization. Within a few years, Londinium had markets bustling with exotic goods, administrative centers organizing trade, and military garrisons ensuring order. It was a city of progress, but also one built upon the uneasy submission of native Britons. By the late 1st century AD, Londinium had grown into a thriving metropolis, a city of immense strategic and economic importance. With a population of 30,000, it was the largest city in Britain, a beacon of Roman engineering, culture, and commerce. Its streets, paved with expertly laid stones, bustled with merchants, craftsmen, and travelers from across the empire. Massive stone warehouses lined the River Thames, where goods from Gaul, Hispania, and even the distant reaches of the Mediterranean arrived daily. Wine, olive oil, pottery, and exotic spices, all feeding the insatiable appetite of Rome's northernmost province. At the heart of the city stood the Forum, a grand public square surrounded by towering marble-clad basilicas and administrative buildings, where governors dictated imperial policy and merchants struck lucrative deals. Nearby, an imposing amphitheater echoed with the roars of spectators, cheering as gladiators clashed in brutal contests. Luxurious bathhouses, adorned with intricate mosaics and heated by advanced hippocaust systems, offered respite to the weary, while the city's temples and shrines paid homage to Jupiter, Mars, and the gods of Rome. Londinium was no longer just a frontier outpost. It was Rome itself, reborn in the wilds of Britannia. For the Romans, Britannia was a jewel to be tamed, an untamed frontier at the edge of the known world. But for Boudica, it was more than just land. It was her homeland, her people, her ancestors' legacy, one she would fight for to the bitter end. She had endured the brutality of Rome, the dishonor, the suffering, and now she would make them pay. The fires of vengeance had been lit. In 60 AD, Boudica led one of the most devastating uprisings in Roman history. The Queen of the Iceni and her warriors descended upon Londinium like a storm, reducing it to ashes. They left no survivors. The streets that had once echoed with trade and the voices of Roman merchants now ran red with blood. Rome's grip on Britannia was at its weakest, and for the first time, the empire knew fear. Rome retaliated with unrelenting force. Legions descended upon Britannia, marching with ruthless precision. No rebellion would be left to fester. No queen would defy the might of the empire and live. In a final decisive battle, Boudica's forces were crushed. The rebellion was extinguished, but Londinium would rise again. From the ashes, stronger, more fortified, a clear message to all who dared oppose Rome: their rule was eternal. Rome knew that to maintain control, it had to invest in its colony. Britons needed to see Roman rule not just as power, but as prosperity. New walls, taller and stronger than before, encircled Londinium, shielding it from future uprisings. Bridges of stone spanned the Thames, linking the city's districts with seamless efficiency. The streets, once filled with the ashes of war, now bustled with traders from across the empire. merchants from Gaul selling fine wines, artisans from Hispania crafting exquisite pottery, and spices from distant lands filling the air with an exotic fragrance. Londinium was no longer just an outpost, it was a thriving Roman metropolis. For centuries, Londinium stood as the jewel of Roman Britain, a symbol of conquest, of order, of civilization at the empire's northern edge. The might of Rome was inscribed in every structure, every law, every marketplace. But change was on the horizon. A new faith was rising within the empire, whispered in secret gatherings spreading from the distant east. This faith would challenge Rome's traditional gods, defy imperial authority, and, in time, reshape not just Londinium, but the entire empire itself. Rome had built a city to last forever, but even the mightiest empire cannot stop the march of time. The might of Rome, once unshakable, had begun to crumble under the weight of time. By the 4th century AD, the empire was a shadow of its former self, fractured by internal strife, weakened by corruption, and besieged by barbarian invasions. Across the vast dominion, Roman legions that had once marched with unwavering discipline now found themselves stretched thin, unable to hold the borders against relentless foes. The call to defend the heart of the empire echoed across the provinces, and so, one by one, the legions were recalled, leaving behind the cities they had built, the roads they had paved, and the people they had ruled. Londinium, once a beacon of Roman power in Britannia, now stood exposed. Without Rome's iron grip, the city fell into chaos. Trade dwindled, its bustling markets now silent. The great stone walls that had shielded Londinium from rebellion and invasion began to crack, no longer patrolled by the disciplined soldiers who had once enforced the emperor's law. The Grand Forum, where politicians and merchants had once gathered in heated debate, became an empty shell, its marble statues weathered by wind and rain. The mighty bridges that spanned the Thames, symbols of Roman engineering and control, stood over a river that now carried fewer and fewer travelers. As Rome's presence faded, so too did its way of life. The baths, once filled with laughter and the scent of perfumed oils, became cold and still. The temples, once the spiritual heart of the city, were abandoned, their stone altars crumbling beneath the weight of neglect. With no soldiers to protect them, the people of Londinium began to flee, seeking refuge in the countryside, away from the uncertainty that loomed over the once great city. Raiders came, Saxons from across the sea, warbands from the north, looting what remained, turning streets that had once been symbols of order into battlegrounds of desperation. By the 5th century, Londinium was little more than a ghost of its former self. Its proud buildings, left to the mercy of time and nature, slowly crumbled into ruin. Trees and vines crept over the stonework, reclaiming what had been taken as centuries before. The roads that had once connected Londinium to the farthest reaches of the empire now lay cracked and overgrown, mere echoes of Rome's grand vision. For the first time in centuries, silence fell over Londinium. No merchants haggling, no soldiers marching, no senators proclaiming the emperor's will. Yet even in decay, Rome's influence endured. Centuries later, when new rulers and new civilizations rose, they would build upon the bones of Londinium, reshaping it into a city reborn. The Roman walls, though battered, would serve as the foundation for medieval defenses. The roads, though faded, would guide the paths of future kings and traders. The legacy of Rome would never truly disappear. It would live on in the heart of a city destined to rise again.